Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Gashouse Gang, a Friday edition of it alongside of Bernie Miklasz. My name is Matt Pauley. Great to have you with us. Bernie, good to see you as always. How are you doing on this Friday?
Doing good. We got another week in the books. Looking forward to a lot of football this weekend, and always enjoy doing the Gashouse Gang with you, Matt.
Just a few housekeeping things to take care of here at the top. First off, for those of you who are watching us live, feel free to comment on what we're talking about, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you might be. Put your comment down, and we'll try to get to some of those as we go through the show. Also, we want you to be subscribed at KMOX Sports on YouTube is the probably best way to do it. And then you can watch this live. You can always know when it's happening. And also head to Bernie's channel at The Bernie Show on YouTube. Subscribe to his channel as well. He's putting out 1 to 2 videos per day. I always laugh, Bernie, because I know you like to say, you'll go 20, 25 minutes, but I love it. Sometimes you're going 40 minutes or so, really going deep on a single topic. And for I think for sports nuts like me, I love just being able to listen to all the stuff that you go deep on.
You know, some people complain I go too long, and I do ramble. I admit it. And it's a lot of, even though I'm prepared and I, do a lot of research, make sure I have my facts straight. I do zigzag all over the place, and just because I like to reinforce certain points, so I'll repeat stuff. So some people complain, and that's okay. Everybody should complain if they feel the need to, that it's too long. But then when I say in my comment section, I say, well, I'm going to start doing some shorter ones. People say, no, don't do that. Actually, these 30-minute videos, it's perfect when I'm like on my walk or I'm on the treadmill or what, because they'll listen to the podcast version, which is available, by the way, at Odyssey through KMOX. So anyway, thank you. I didn't mean to go on about that.
How does can you compare the preparation you do and have done when writing columns versus the prep that you do for videos? Is it similar or is it different?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. And I keep a file because you never know when I'm going to want to write about something, even if it's 2 or 3 weeks later, and update it. So yeah, I keep comprehensive notes on a lot of things.
We are brought to you by our great sponsor, CGA Heating and Cooling. Dirk Gould mentioned you quickly on Twitter the other day because he was kind of comparing where the Cardinals are at right now with Nolan Arenado set to be traded with a previous time where the Cardinals were looking to trade a cornerstone third baseman. And I thought it was interesting to kind of go back and to compare the two moments the way that Derek did.
Yeah, that was an interesting time for the Cardinals, and Scott Rowland and Tony La Russa with John Mozeliak in the middle of it. It was a very contentious relationship between Rowland and La Russa, two really strong-willed guys. I mean, both of them brilliant at what they do, but very bullheaded. And, Rowland stood his ground. La Russa stood his ground, said, no, we're not here to accommodate players. This is about the team. Just because he wants to be traded, we're not going to make a bad deal. And that put Mozeliak in a tough spot. And Mozeliak did okay. He got Troy Glaus for him. I mean, the point is it wouldn't have worked with La Russa and Rowland. I'm just glad that they've patched it up and they get along now. But I think this situation is different only because it isn't so much that Arenado hates anybody here, or he's just like, I can't play for this guy. I can't, it's just a matter of whether pragmatically it makes sense for the Cardinals to move him. And I think it does. I think most people agree with that. But to our knowledge, I mean, as Derek Gould has reported, it's not like Nolan Arenado has like demanded a trade or requested a trade. They've agreed to just kind of wait and see if how many phone calls and how many emails John Mozeliak gets, and if there's anything interesting that the Cardinals and Arenado have to talk about. So we just have to ride this out.
Yeah, I feel like there's some dominoes that have to come down. Reportedly, the Astros have offered Bregman a contract. That plays into this. Whether or not the Phillies can trade away Alec Boehm, is involved in this. There's some other guys out there. So this is one of those things where I don't think the Cardinals can wake up tomorrow morning and trade Nolan Arenado. There's 3 or 4 domino pieces that really have to happen this offseason before there might even be that opportunity to trade away an Arenado.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And there's questions about, how much salary relief would the other team want in a trade? How much money would the Cardinals have to absorb? The other thing is, what would you get in return? And you know how this goes. I think you may have said this the other day on the Gashouse Gang. The more of Arenado's contract the Cardinals are willing to eat, the higher the return will be in terms of the trade exchange. Although I don't think Kevin Wheeler mentioned yesterday, even in that scenario, it's not like the Cardinals are going to get some windfall for trading Arenado. It's just he's where he is in his career isn't really compatible with where the Cardinals are now, what their motivations are for 2025. And Arenado at 34 is kind of an old, he'll be 34. He's kind of an old 34 given the 2-year decline. Last year was a very noticeable decline as far as power.
Bernie, you mentioned something earlier this week, and I think it's worth talking about a little bit more. The Cardinals can say over and over and over that this is what they're trying to do is open up opportunities for younger players. And I hope it turns out that way, and it probably will when all is said and done. But when you look at things right now, those doors aren't, other than the catcher spot, which is clearly 2 young guys are going to get an opportunity. Without Nolan Arenado traded, that third base it's a really big spot in terms of finding opportunities for some guys. But you got an old guy at first base with Wilson Contreras. Mason Wynn doesn't really count into this consideration because he's already the everyday shortstop. The outfield situation, we can certainly put Jordan Walker in there, but Walker's going to be the guy. And he's not this new young guy that hasn't really played much. There's some things are going to have to happen for them to legitimately be giving young players more opportunities.
I'm glad you brought it up because I'll be honest, man. I think that we as media people need to talk about this more. And sometimes I feel like, I'm the town grouch and I'm the one that always brings stuff up about, well, ho, this whole play the young guys here. Well, how many jobs do they have exactly? Mm-hmm. And I just think it needs to be scrutinized because you're right. And we're right. Those of us who bring it up. I mean, there's just not, especially if they keep Arenado, like where is the outlet for all these young players? Because then Gorman would go back to the second base situation. And then Donovan's part of that. Sajaysi's part of that. If they bring up Weatherholt, he could be part of that. Then all of a sudden it's really crowded at second base. And you have a 34-year-old third baseman. In the outfield, they're committed to Walker in right field. It seems to me they prefer Ciani to Victor Scott, although Victor Scott should get some run. And in left field, they're obviously committed to Nootbaar. Burleson could play in corner outfield. He can play some first base. He can DH. But if you run through it, it's not like there's a lot of like open space for young players. I mean, I think the flexibility is rather limited, especially if Arenado stays. And then one other thing, which I think we don't talk about enough, and that includes me, I don't talk about it enough. The Cardinals have some good young pitchers. Palante, depending on whether you consider him young or more. I mean, he is in terms of his experience, but it's not like he's 22. But, we talk about McGreevy getting a chance. We talk about maybe Graceffo getting a chance. We talk about Tink Hentz on the way. We talk about Quinn Matthews being close. There's some other guys I can mention, but the fact of the matter is the rotation pretty much is filled right now. If they go with Miklasz and they go with Matz in the rotation instead of the bullpen, they could always slide him to the bullpen. But it's not like you have 3 or 4 rotation spots open either. I think you will have some bullpen jobs open. So I think that this whole, they're going to play the kids thing, I think it's overstated. And I think that, we have to sort of recognize that that's their intention. That's what they would like to do, very much like to do. But from a practical matter, how many jobs do they really have to give young players an outlet? I think it's a legit question.
Yeah. If the season started tomorrow from a starting rotation standpoint, it would go Gray, Fetty, Palante, Miklasz, and then I think we'd probably have some sort of competition between McGreevy and Matz for that 5th spot. And Matz wants to be a starter. Now, I don't think every single guy that I just mentioned is going to be a Cardinal when the season gets started. If they can get out from under a Miles Michaelis contract and he'll waive his no trade, same thing. If some team is willing to give Steven Matz an opportunity to be a starter, I'm sure he would be very happy to go do that. So it's a problem that might fix itself, but right now it is a problem. And when John Mozeliak has said there's going to be many opportunities for young players, Bernie, he hasn't said there's going to be many opportunities for young relievers. He said young players. And right now, to your point, catcher and the relief corps seems to be the only clear spots where there are those opportunities for these young players.
No doubt. And the other interesting angle to this, and I haven't talked about this, I may be writing about it or doing a video on it soon, but we've got some conflicting agendas in a way. in this context. You have Ollie Marmol, who is obviously, let's just be really frank here. He's not a popular manager in St. Louis. And no matter what he does, I mean, there are people in our town, I heard from all of them, I think, would not even concede he did a good job running the bullpen last year, which is absolutely preposterous. He did a great job of running the bullpen. So people will not give him credit for anything. And they will criticize things that perhaps he doesn't deserve. But here's my point. He's got a 2-year contract. 2025 will be the first year of that. It runs through 2026. So if you have Mozeliak saying, play the young kids, play the young kids, play the young kids. I want to see young starters in there. I want to see this. I want to see that. This is what we prefer. This is our plan for 2025. You also have a manager who in effect is fighting to keep his job, to live till 2026. So how does that inform Ollie Marmol's playing time decisions? Like, I'll give you 2 quick examples. We mentioned the catcher job. Okay, I don't think there's any doubt that the Cardinals would deny it, but I don't think there's any doubt that the pitchers would prefer Pedro Pages because he's more advanced in terms of pitch selection. He's more refined behind the plate than Herrera is. So if you're Ollie Marmol, do you want to keep your pitchers happy by playing Pages more than Herrera? In my opinion, it's in the Cardinals' best long-term interest to get Herrera in there as much as possible. It's the only way he's going to get better defensively. And he did improve defensively last year. And you also want that bat in the lineup. Then the other situation is in center field. Now, Ciani, the Cardinals had a really good record when he started. And he actually did begin to hit. And I haven't given him enough credit. Before he got hurt, he was hitting pretty well. But again, does the organization want to see a lot more of Victor Scott in center field, hypothetically? Would they be okay with Ciani making most of the starts if that's what Marmol wants? Because, again, his pitchers want that great defender in center field. So I'm not saying they're at cross purposes, but in a way that possibility exists. As far as the manager feeling like he's got to win as many games as he can, and the front office feeling like, well, no, this is a year set aside as we find out more about young players. Well, which sentiment is going to prevail? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the Gashouse Gang. We are presented by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Bernie, Saliga continues to just they do amazing things supporting us and supporting you at KMOX, and then they go ahead and do amazing things in the way they operate their business as well.
And I appreciate their sponsorship of the Gashouse Gang. I've been a Saliga family client member, my wife and I, for 15, 16 years. So I'm proud to represent them. And we have found out that Saliga Heating and Cooling, which is an independent American standard heating and air conditioning dealer, owned by the same family continuously since 1927, we have found them to be the gold standard in terms of their integrity, their professionalism, their knowledge, the way they are in your home, total class. We have also found them to propose, if we have a problem, a cheaper solution rather than buying some big new piece of equipment. They saved us a lot of money by convincing us that we could get another couple of years out of a boiler that we had. And they were right. And then finally, we did have to buy a new boiler, but we didn't have to do it as soon as maybe we were thinking we had to do it. So again, their honesty is tremendous. And they have that American standard heating and air conditioning equipment. The other 2 things real quick I want to mention, they have the Priority Club. We're a member of that too. You get on a maintenance plan. Basically, they check your heating before it gets really, really cold. And in the summer, they check your air conditioning system before it gets really, really hot to make sure everything's running smoothly. And a lot of times they could detect a small problem before it becomes a major and more expensive problem. So they also have financing options available subject to credit approval. I would just say go to SaligaHeatingandCooling.com, SaligaHeatingCooling.com. You'll find the phone number. You'll find information on some of the things I just talked about. Thank you to Dan Saliga and Saliga Heating and Cooling.
This is the Gashouse Gang alongside of Bernie Miklasz. My name is Matt Pauley. If you are watching us live, feel free to comment on whatever social media channel you're watching us on, and we can certainly address some of those comments as we move along. Just jumping off where we were at a moment ago, Bernie, we've spoken so much, I think, hypothetically, about the positives that can happen this year, and rightfully so. I'm excited to see what some of these young players can do and what can happen if somebody's just sort of given a job and told that they can run with it without as much pressure. But what if it turns out badly? What if Jordan Walker continues to hit the ball on the ground and continues to swing and miss at everything low and away? What if Nolan Gorman strikes out 2 times a game and hits 180? What kind of leash in a year that's supposed to be a reboot, a reset, in a year where you're supposed to learn what you have in these young players? If those guys are having that kind of season, how much leash do you think this team gives them?
Well, this is my opinion. I think they need to play as much as possible. And I think that you've hired a new hitting coach that could, in theory, make a difference. I think John Jay on the coaching staff will also help. He was a player. He knows what it's like to slump and to go through all these trials and tribulations. I think he can be a really good resource for Walker and Gorman if their confidence is down and they're really struggling. But if Ali Marmol starts yanking these guys from the lineup every time they have a bad week, and we sort of enter this maddening cuckoo cycle again, we're going to play the young players. Oh, Walker and Gorman, we think they're going to be special. We're not giving up on them. It was a bad year, but we're confident in them. Okay, once again, but if you're trying to win games and they're not helping the cause, how quick are they pulled, and how quick does this whole rigmarole start all over again? I think you need to avoid that. I think you got to let these guys sink or swim, and then you can make a much more informed decision about what happens next. I think you have to live up to the promise of giving the young guys an opportunity. That includes 2 guys potentially as important. Well, they're very important, Walker and Gorman. You can't say you're committed to giving these young guys full opportunities and then just renege on that as soon as they get into a bad slump. You just have to ride with it.
I agree. If we get to June 1st, if we get to July, like, at some point, I think we saw it with Victor Scott this past year. It got to a point where clearly him being in the big leagues was no longer good for him. And I had no problem with when they finally pulled the plug on Victor Scott.
Right.
It was an easy decision to make. I don't want to see them get to that decision point. And maybe with those guys, if they get to that point this year with those guys, that tells you everything you need to know about those guys. Maybe at that point you have learned what you want to learn.
Well, and Victor Scott was a first-time major leaguer, and he was probably here before he should have been. Although I don't want to be a hypocrite, I was one of the people that thought, hey, let him play. You need a center fielder, give him a chance. And he really, to say the least, I mean, he really, really had a hard time, and they made the right decision to send him down. But if you look at what Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman did in 2023, first of all, Nolan Gorman did a lot of good things in 2022. But if you look at as a tandem what Walker and Gorman did in 2023, it was really exciting. They were really good. I didn't say perfect. There were flaws, but they were really, really good. I mean, if their combined slugging percentage was about 460. Their on base percentage combined was about 335. I think they hit 262 combined. Just a lot of good stuff in there. Gorman drew a lot of walks. And then 2024, both of them just kind of basically disappeared from the face of the earth, and they were as bad as you can get. So at least with Gorman and Walker, they can do it because you saw them do it a relatively short time ago in 2023, and you know what they're capable of. And that's why I think they need to be given whatever time they need to work through some issues, especially with the new batting coach, maybe changing some things around. They need a long run of trying to work things out, because that's what this season has been set aside for. So you have to remain true to that promise, in my opinion. This isn't about winning games. It's about getting them reestablished.
I do think it was a good story, a good indication. John Denton from MLB.com wrote about it the other day. The fact that Brant Brown is already getting together with Nolan Gorman. We're starting to get a few more stories about Brant Brown and his personality and the way he goes about being passionate about teaching hitting and things like that.
Right.
All that matters at the end of the day is if guys actually get better hitting and we'll learn something. And we put so much stock into hitting coaches sometimes when we put too much stock into it, but it feels like what we're hearing so far is certainly good news.
And again, pardon the self-promotion, but I did a 35 minute video yesterday on my channel about how just providing the information that, Gorman can be fixed. Walker can be fixed. Long story short, Walker actually implemented changes in his batting stance and his approach late in the season, and he had a really strong September. His stance, Eduardo Perez picked up on it on ESPN. He was all kind of corkscrewed up, and you just understand with somebody 6'5", how he was going to get a good swing where everything was all knotted up and it just was awkward. Well, he finally got into a new swing and a new approach and a new stance. And after some patience, it paid off. So he seems like he may have turned a corner late last season. With Gorman, it's simply this. And I did a mountain of research, which obviously I ain't going to use here because I don't have the time and it might be boring. With Gorman, it's all about managing the strike zone. And that's not a revelation. We already know that. But specifically, he takes too many called strikes and he gets down in the count to pitchers. And it's 0-1, it's 0-2, it's 1-2. A lot of it because he's letting really good hittable pitches go by. And then once they have him set up, they throw him the changeup, which he can't hit, and they have him at their mercy. He's got to establish control of the count. And this is not exactly like splitting the atom. This is like basic hitting. Just if you see a pitch, the pitch you're looking for, swing the bat. Don't stand there and look at it. I mean, this is what we teach little kids playing baseball, right? So that problem is solvable. And Gorman has got to just kind of clear his head of what happened last year. Listen to the new coach, and I know Brant Brown is big on that. Hey, you look for a strike early in the count and you punish it. Don't let these pitchers get away with it. And if Gorman can do that, I think he can have a bounce back season. And Walker's already made a pretty big change that will enable him to have a bounce back season if he can follow through on it.
I'm not trying to go all Kevin Wheeler or try to break down swings. I'm not the one to do that. But in baseball, we talk about being able to, this applies more to pitching than hitting, but I think it's both. Being able to repeat a pitch. And if you're a tall, lanky person, it is hard to repeat a pitch just because of all the movement and everything. It's so much easier for something to get out of whack. To Walker's point, and I think we've seen this at times with somebody like Aaron Judge. As great as Aaron Judge is, he gets into these funks sometimes. And I think physically, it's easier to get into a funk when you've got long legs and long arms and there's so much extra movement that can occur because of it.
That's right. And I think that's the biggest thing with Walker too. It needs to be more straight line, more streamlined at the plate in the batter's box. And and as you alluded to earlier too, he's got to just lay off the low and away pitches because he's just getting himself out with that stuff. And people say, well, he's got to quit trying to hit home runs. I don't view Walker as a guy who tries to hit home runs. And if you're chasing low and away pitches, newsflash, you ain't going to hit home runs. So with Gorman, he's a home run hitter. It's just a matter of pouncing early on pitches, and his power will take care of the rest.
Not to be funny, but for Jordan Walker, don't hit home runs. Just get the ball over the head of the second baseman and shortstop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I learned a lot covering Tony La Russa for 16 seasons. I learned a lot, and we would have long, deep talks in his office after games. And I would ask him about everything, and he would go into it in detail about his philosophy. And one of the things he believed and he preached, and his hitting coaches, especially Mark McGuire, preached, was that don't just concentrate on hitting the ball hard up the middle. Because it doesn't mean if you're concentrating on just hitting the ball hard up the middle, it means you're going to hit it hard up the middle over and over again. It means that you're taking a really good swing, and a really good swing will pay off. You're not trying to pull everything. You're not trying to hack at everything. You just want to make great contact, drive the ball up the middle, and the rest will take care of itself. That's a simple philosophy, but after watching La Russa's teams for 16 years, it's 100% correct. And so when people say that, they might think, they're being, I don't know what the word is, but actually they're being 100% correct on preaching that, because that's the way to go about it.
This is the Gashouse Gang. We're presented by CGA Heating and Cooling. By the way, if you're watching us on Twitter or X, as they call it now, we have a community as well that you can join and get involved with the program that way. So for those of you who are watching us on that channel, make sure to join our X community and get in there. It's a dugout community. It's a whole lot of just trying to get people more connected to the program. Looking ahead to the football weekend, Bernie, as we here are on a Friday, it feels a little bit different. Last weekend was so incredible with some of the matchups. Don't quite have that. We have not heard from Tom Ackerman here lately. We don't know if he has already started the pregame process because in college football, clearly and obviously the biggest game is his Indiana Hoosiers matched up against Ohio State. Ohio State's a pretty heavy favorite in this one. For Indiana, for us talking, not for them internally, but for us talking, they've got to just not get blown out. If they can go compete against Ohio State, even if they don't win that game, that probably keeps them in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, if this is the only loss they have, I think it's going to be really difficult for the committee to keep them out. And if they play Ohio State close, they give them a good game. I think it's impossible to keep them out, even if they lose it. If they lose 50-7, well, maybe the committee will pause and reflect on that. I don't know, because the committee seems to change their philosophy from week to week. But yeah, the Hoosiers, as we record this, they're a 14-point underdog. And I kind of look at it from the standpoint, can they cover the spread? Can they make it close? And I'm seeing a lot of sharp money believe the Hoosiers can cover the spread and make a game out of it. So I'm not sure. But the Buckeyes, their starting center is out. They've got some other pretty tough injuries. They're trying to deal with it up and down the roster. We know that Indiana is going to be super motivated. They want to shut everybody up. Ohio State's 10-0 straight up against the Hoosiers in the last 10 meetings. And obviously I made notes. I'm not trying to fake it here. So I think Indiana's got the classic underdog look about them, but this spread has bounced from going like high single digits now all the way up to 14. And I've even seen 14.5. It's almost like the club, more that people look at Indiana's schedule, the more they think, well, wait a minute, we're overestimating Indiana. So I really think this is a great opportunity for the Hoosiers. I think Ohio State's going to win the game, which is hardly, like a lightning bolt from the sky for me to say that. But I'm hoping to see a close game, and I think it can be a competitive game. And I'd like to see Indiana in the tournament. So I think playing this one pretty tight would definitely help their cause, even if they lose.
Because of the expanded playoff and because of conference champions getting in and everything, every week there are games that have implications beyond what they normally would have. The Big 12 has turned out to be kind of a not great league this year. Going into the year, you thought maybe they would be the top league of the non-SEC Big 10. It hasn't worked out that way. But what that's done is all of a sudden a BYU, Arizona State, a Colorado, Kansas, those games with teams that are still trying to get into the Big 12 championship game, those games actually end up having college football playoff implications, and those might be as big a games as anything other than Indiana, Ohio State.
Yeah, I think Colorado and Kansas is a huge game tomorrow. Kansas is a 2.5-point underdog at home. There's a lot at stake, especially for Colorado. They're tied with BYU in the standings. They're both 6-1. No, BYU, I think, is 6-1. I think that Colorado's maybe a game in back of them.
No, I think they're both 6-1.
They're both 6-1. Okay,
yeah,
I made a bad note there, and I apologize. Thanks for correcting me because I needed that. So if the Buffaloes win out, including this game, they're going to be playing in the Big 12 championship game. So I think that's this is huge for Colorado, and I've seen people that I respect who are professional investors in sporting events really like the Jayhawks in this game because they've been playing like a top 25 team. If you look at Kansas' record, it's unbelievable the number of close losses. And hey, listen, you either win or you lose. But the point is their record is misleading. And it's why I took them to win the game at BYU last week, because they're starting to play really well. And they've had a lot of tough luck along the way of some of those losses. And they seem to be moving away from that. And I also think KU, one of their strengths is they got really good cornerbacks. They cover the pass pretty well. So we'll see. And, Colorado has faced a weaker schedule than Kansas. So if I were a gambling man on this, I'd probably take the home underdog.
Locally, Missouri goes to Mississippi State. It has been a struggle for Mississippi State this year. Jeff Lebby in his first year there. If Missouri plays the way they played against South Carolina, they should be in pretty good shape.
I think so. And Mississippi State's it's a puzzling team in a way, because every now and then they rise up and they'll play someone really tight for 2.5 quarters or whatever. But listen, Mizzou's highly motivated. First of all, the fact that the committee kept them in the top 25, I thought was great for Mizzou at number 23, I believe. But also, they want to get to 10 wins. And step one is you can't lose at Mississippi State, and you can't lose at home to Arkansas. And then you have to win a bowl game. They want to run the table and get to 10 wins. And if they do, it's a really outstanding season. I mean, it would be a disappointing season because they didn't make the playoff, and they had a favorable schedule that really enhanced their chances of that. And they didn't take advantage of it because they've been so bad on the road against SEC teams. The first half, especially, not the second half last week at South Carolina. But Mizzou can't afford to stumble, because if they lose to a really, as the SEC goes, a really bad team, then it'll just, the idea that people like me are still going to be positive that they can get to 10 wins. If you cost yourself that chance by losing at Mississippi State, shame on you. So I think they'll be highly motivated to win that game tomorrow. They have a lot to play for still.
Something I didn't talk about much this week, and I probably should have. Illinois, going into this past weekend's game against Michigan State, they were coming off that loss against Minnesota. It was the first kind of winnable game they hadn't won this year, and you didn't really know if that program in that season was going to take a left turn here in the final few weeks, and then they go just roll over Michigan State, and that was really good for them. And now they're going to go to Rutgers. Rutgers is actually favored, I think, by a point in this game, the last thing I saw. But this now all of a sudden, much like Missouri, Illinois is in great shape to put together a really, really good season from a win-loss record with 2 winnable games left in the regular season.
No, I agree. And this is a good one because Rutgers is a kind of a sneaky good team under Greg Schiano once he's got that thing revved up again after coming back. And I think Rutgers has been pretty good at home. I think it's a tough test for Illinois, but I'm all on the board on Brett Bielema in terms of what he can do with this program. And I like the season they've had so far, except for that home loss to Minnesota. So speaking of Minnesota, by the way, watch out tomorrow. Penn State going to the Twin Cities. Mm-hmm. I think, if nothing else, Minnesota can put a scare into the Nittany Lions, maybe steal the game. But if I were wagering on this, I would take the points. And I right now I don't have that in front of me, and I apologize. I would take the points because they're getting a lot of points. Maybe 11 and a half last I saw. I think they're going to cover, and I think they're going to scare the Nittany Lions. And if I'm wrong about that, everyone please make fun of me. That's fine.
Anything, last weekend we had the Steelers and Ravens. We had the Chiefs.
Wait a minute, you got Army Notre Dame. That's why I'm wearing the Army hat.
Okay, right? So I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I love Army football except when they're playing Navy. And, the bottom line on this, though, is I just love the way that Notre Dame is playing. Army, it pains me to say it because I don't want to downgrade their undefeated record, but they haven't played anybody. And this is the first team they've played that's got any kind of real, true substance. So Army's getting a lot of points at Notre Dame, but I think Notre Dame takes this one. Yep, and I know Notre Dame lost to what it turned out to be a really bad Northern Illinois team. So things happen, but you saw Notre Dame just wallop my beloved midshipmen, and I think Army's a little better than Navy, but the same dynamic applies. There's just too much athleticism, and they can do a lot of things that take away Army's quarterback, who's really good. So anyway, I wanted to sneak that in.
Well, they're playing the game at Yankee Stadium. So Army, Notre Dame, at Yankee. This is just a great American sporting event that's about to take place.
It is. I mean, It's like shades of Colonel Blake when he this is for the old timers out there. When Red Blake had those great Army national championship teams, so I like that. I think this will be a fun game to watch. I'm really very looking forward to it. Thanks for pointing out the setting, because the setting is one of the things that'll make it so colorful.
Anything jump out at you this weekend in the NFL? I don't think it's a great schedule of games. Last night turned into kind of an interesting one, but outside of that, it's not what it was last weekend.
I do have some thoughts in terms about games that interest me, and the games that interest me may not interest other people. I'll tell you one. I hate the Dallas Cowboys. I don't care about them. They're irrelevant to any type of standings. But I've really liked to watch the Washington Commanders this year, and there has been a big difference in Jaden Daniels since he suffered that rib injury, and since he's returned. His last 4 games, his rushing yards have basically diminished. He's thrown for 4 touchdowns. His passer rating is down. His completion percentage is down. But, before his first 6 games, he had 322 yards rushing, and he rushed for 4 touchdowns. His last 4 games, he's rushed for only 52 yards. So that multidimensional talent of his that made him so exciting, that's kind of gone underground because maybe he's been protecting the injury. They had extra rest before this game. So I want to see Jalen Daniels be Jalen Daniels again. And I think a lot of people are looking at that. Another game that really interests me is, the NFC West is wide open because the 49ers are a disappointment. Arizona's playing at Seattle. Arizona is actually really good, better than their record indicates. They're 6-4, for example. You say, well, what's so great about that? Well, here their schedule has included games against the Bills, Rams, Lions, Commanders, 49ers, Packers, and Chargers. They've played a really tough slate, and Kyler Murray has played very, very well. And I think Seattle is also a team that we take for granted. Last year, Arizona was 0-6 in the division. This year, they're 2-0. And this one could decide, it'll certainly shape the NFC West race. And the game is at Seattle. So this will be fun to watch. And quickly, a game that interests me is, there's a couple, not Kansas City. I want to see if they rebound or what. Green Bay, Detroit and Indianapolis could be a trap game for the Lions. I don't think so, though. Anytime the Bears play, the Matt Eberflus watch is on. So we'll see how they handle their business. But Baltimore at the LA Chargers is a really good game. You've got the Harbaugh brothers going at it. The Ravens are a talented team, but all they do is draw penalty after penalty after penalty after penalty, and their defense is really bad. And this will be an interesting matchup because, the Chargers, it's Jim Harbaugh football, hard-nosed, violent, extremely physical, and they're content to drain the clock, run the ball, don't limit the possessions for Lamar Jackson. And I think this one will just be fun to watch because it's going to be a brawl. And I think the Chargers at home have the upper hand because they're not as sloppy of a team as the Ravens are so far. So anyway, I did jot down a few things, as you could tell, because I wanted to have something coherent to say. So there we go. Those are the things I'm keeping an eye on in the NFL this weekend in particular.
Certainly more than coherent there. This is the Gashouse Gang. That's Bernie Miklasz. I'm Matt Pauley. Bernie, again, we are so thankful to have CGA Heating and Cooling along for the ride here.
Yeah, it was a long time ago in St. Louis. We said, well, we needed somebody with heating and cooling. And we live in an old house, and some of the equipment was, probably needed to be changed. We're having more problems. So we need to find a new heating and cooling. So we went with CGA, and it's one of the best decisions we've ever made. They've taken great care of us for the last 15, 16 years. But then again, this independent American Standard heating air conditioning dealer has been taking great care of St. Louis families, generations of them, since 1927. So they'll be moving in on 100 years of business, and they're still in the same building down in Gravois in South City. So Dan CGA is a 4th-generation family owner-operator. He will take great care of you because, listen, you don't have to believe me just because we're a CGA family. Just look at the track record they've had. Nearly 100 years and still going strong. To me, that speaks volumes about how good they are. Think about becoming a member of the Priority Club because basically that's a maintenance program. You can get your AC checked before the hot weather hits, make sure everything's ready. Same in the winter, get your heating checked in advance, make sure everything's functioning, and you don't have any surprises on one of those days it's 8 degrees outside. They also, so become a member of that maintenance club, but I also want to remind you financing options are available subject to credit approval. Look, all the services available. You just go to CGAHeatingandCooling.com. Phone numbers there, CGAHeatingandCooling.com. And thanks to Dan CGA and our friends at CGA Heating and Cooling for sponsoring the Gashouse Gang.
Just about set to wrap up here, Bernie, but real quickly on the Blues, and there's not a lot to say, but I guess my question for you is, last night they've got the lead. They give up the lead really, really late, which forces overtime. They eventually win the game in a shootout against San Jose. Is it a good night for them because they get the 2 points, or is it a bad night for them because of the way they once again had a third period letdown and allowed San Jose to force an overtime?
A win is a win, and they were desperate for a win because things have been going so poorly. Even the way they got it, at least they have to feel good about it. But yeah, they let another third period lead slip away. The other thing is they're not scoring. That continues. This team is now 29th in the NHL, and there's only 32 teams, 29th in the NHL in goals per game. The one thing I liked last night is that at least they were preventing goals, because the Blues, with the goaltending they've had the last couple of years, we know that Hofer and Binnington are really good, but I think this has gotten overlooked. Look, the Blues are now 26th in the NHL in goals allowed per game. So the power play is 28th, the penalty kills 24th. My point is, it was nice for them to win a game. But man, oh man, oh man, they are not particularly good. In fact, they're not good in any area, and I just laid out where they rank. So we'll see. They now play, what is it, 6 of the next 7 or 7 of the next 8 on the road. So this is going to be a really challenging time for the Blues and their coach, Drew Bannister.
Unfortunately, when things aren't going great, when positive things do happen, they get kind of overlooked. But Jordan Binnington with the victory, that's his 151st career victory. So he ties the franchise record. To be the guy who's connected to the Stanley Cup and to do this, man, he is forever and ever and ever going to be one of the all-time greats in St. Louis Blues history.
And the one thing I admire about him is that after that dreamlike Stanley Cup season, and I don't think anybody expected that he would be able to sustain that type of performance, he's had some hard times. I mean, there was a while there that he kind of lost it. And we were wondering whether Doug Armstrong made a huge mistake investing in a long-term contract in him. And I think when goalies lose their confidence, and I know it fluctuates, sometimes they never get it back. Sometimes they're never the same. But Binnington's a mentally tough dude, because he's absolutely gotten it back. And he's been really, really terrific the last couple plus years. And so he showed a lot of mental toughness in that. So I respect the heck out of him, and I'm glad that he's still a Blue.
We certainly appreciate everybody who's been watching and listening to this. Again, make sure to subscribe. 2 channels to subscribe to, at KMOX Sports on YouTube, at The Bernie Show as well. And he's got videos coming out every day. In addition to that, we've got our new Gashouse Gang community on X or Twitter, so you can check out that for yourself as well. Bernie, have a wonderful weekend. Monday, the 4 of us will get back together.
Looking forward to it, Matt. And Thanksgiving next week. It's the most wonderful time of the year. We're cruising into it. So everyone enjoy the weekend.
Absolutely. That's Bernie Miklasz. I'm Matt Pauley. This has been the Gashouse Gang. Thanks so much for being tuned in.